Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Laura Hathaway on the show with us. She's an IFBB pro. She has Alopecia Universalis, and we're here to spread a little bit of awareness about that, and we'll talk about that. She's also a certified personal trainer as well as a posing and wellness coach. But she's also another hot commodity. She is an NPC judge, and I know she'll be the second judge that we've had on the show, so we have a lot of questions to ask her about that. But starting off, Alopecia Universalis, I've never heard of that personally. So first of all, could you explain what is that and like how that affects you in your day-to-day life?
Sure. Well, great question because before 12 years ago, I did not know what alopecia universalis was. And I wasn't feeling good for a little while prior to my onset. And one day, literally, my hairdresser found a spot that looked like a dime on the back of my head. And within a week, I ran my fingers through my hair and it started falling out. And it never stopped until I lost eyelashes, eyebrows, and 100% no body hair. Alopecia universalis is an autoimmune condition where your body's attacking your, mistakenly attacking your hair follicles, like rheumatoid arthritis attacks one's joints. There's no cure. There's medications that can maybe help you regrow your hair, but because there's no cure, if you're in remission, you might grow hair. But once you stop taking all these harsh medications, chances are your hair will fall out again. So I tried everything I could at first, medication wise, and wasn't feeling well. Was super depressed, severely depressed, and decided, to make do with what I had for quality of life reasons, and moved on from there.
So how does it affect you? Because I have an aunt who has MS, and that's one of those things where it lies dormant in your system. I mean, you were kind of born with it, but it doesn't affect you until later on in life. Alopecia
Yeah.
universalis, is that similar, or is it something that infects you, or how do you get it?
Yes, I'm gonna say it's probably something similar. I don't know that total answer,
Mhm.
but I know it's thought that when you have alopecia universalis, you're thought to also have other autoimmune diseases. So, I've done a lot of speaking, research, and whatnot, and people are born with it. People get it later in life. People get it when they have kids, when they don't have kids. So there's no rhyme or reason, just like many other autoimmune conditions. Um, and how it affects me daily. It's a more at this stage for me, I think it would be a mental health disease because, I was in my mid 30s when I had this. So I depended on my hair just and eyelashes and eyebrows, just like you depended on it. So can you imagine having something that you never ever thought would be gone
Mhm.
disappear within a month? So, although I'm doing phenomenally well now, it's a daily reminder
Mhm.
of not looking like everyone else. And also, I do put eyelashes on every day because, believe it or not, it does protect your
Yep.
eyes. um, and it makes me feel more like me. So,
Mhm.
physically, I actually am pretty healthy. I don't have any other issues,
Mhm.
from alopecia.
Mhm.
So I'm doing pretty
Mhm.
phenomenally.
And that's great because more power to you because like you said, if that happened to me though, the only problem is I'm a guy, so if I was bald or whatever, it'd be a lot more acceptable. So some guys can really pull that off, but it's just so great that you finally accepted it, and just because I know a lot of people have a lot of things, and just accepting that is one of the hardest things. But once you do, it makes everything so much easier, and it's like more power to you. You still look amazing, you still look great. But as when we're going into your health and fitness journey, what really inspired you and motivated you to get into weight training and to really get into adapting that lifestyle?
Okay. So to back it up a little bit, up until like 4 years ago, I wore wigs full time.
Mhm.
I did get my husband, about 7 years ago when we were dating, he was a competitor. So that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with him because he was into bodybuilding and baseball at the time. He went to college for baseball, amongst other things. And um, so when we were engaged, he did some bodybuilding competitions. Never thought that would be me, but was amazed by the sport. Went to shows, met Jay Cutler, Beth Francis back in the day, and like from a distance, I was in awe of all these people. So then forward, about 7, 8 years ago, my husband wanted to get back into competing. And at that time, I had been wearing wigs and eyelashes and eyebrows and getting my life together. And I thought to try to do something to get out of my head from having alopecia. The thought of changing one's body was intriguing to me in terms of I can't grow my hair back. I can't take a medication. So to maybe change it in an empowering way, I decided to jump on board and do a fitness competition. And might I tell you, I hated it. I probably cheated. I hated the posing. I wanted to quit, but in spirit of who I am, I made it to the finish line. Did a show, hated it, and all of a sudden, like a month later, I'm like, all right, I want to do it again, and built, this love of this sport from there.
Yeah, I mean, we hear so many stories. It's almost like an addiction because, like you said, you hate it at first, but then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I might actually want to do that again. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things that, I mean, gets a lot of people hooked onto it, and I mean, it's just amazing what that can do to the body. But
Yeah.
also, I love to ask because if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. Whether it
Hmm.
comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercise they do. So many little things add up to the overall package that you end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you starting out, sort of realizing what worked best for your body? Because I always say if you were to walk up to someone and say like, oh my God, what'd you train for that body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
Yeah, that's an absolutely great question. Um, and it is apples and oranges, and it's every prep is different. And I working with different coaches is different. And I mean, that's why I love this sport, because if you do it one way, you might as well quit. You're not going to change. Our goal with each show is to change, to look better, refined, add muscle, whatever, is needed. So isn't that the amazing part of the sport?
Mhm.
So yeah, you know,
Yeah, it really. I always compare it to being sort of like a mad scientist, where you're just concocting new ways to get better or different looks, or how to gain more in this area and sort of balance it out. But that sort of brings me into one of my favorite questions I love to ask because everyone's genetics are differently, so everyone's answer is different, which I love. But when it comes to getting started working out, everyone always has that one body part that really takes off where they don't have to train it as much, and then everyone always has that one body part that really lags behind that they sort of have to train to overdrive. I mean, I'll give my example first. So I have my back. I can train like once a month and it still looks really great. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. But I'm also 6'3", so my legs are just absolutely nothing compared to anyone else. I mean, I used to have that pitcher's body where you gotta be skinny, you gotta be long and lengthy. So yeah, legs have been so bad to me. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started out?
um, I didn't have legs, and the leaner I got, I really didn't have
Mhm.
legs. And I had a butt, but when I died it down, I didn't have a butt. Excuse me. I would say, shoulders comes easy to me. I do train it just as hard. So shoulders, I don't have to train as hard as other body parts, even though I do train that
Mhm.
hard. But I feel like those built out. Somebody just complimented them today, but I wish my legs responded like my delts respond.
I always say my biggest pet peeve are those people with those genetically blessed calves because that is the one body part where it's basically 99% genetics. Where I could basically, like I said, I could inject pure muscle into them. I could do 10,000 calf raises a day and they wouldn't grow one bit. So yeah, that's just one area. But I also love to say, because the general public doesn't realize, I don't think at least, that just to be able to get into shape to get ready for a prep takes so much hard work and dedication. But going into a prep, that is notching things up to an extreme level when it comes to, you got to get all of your workouts in. You got to eat the right amount of
Yeah,
food at the right amount of times. I mean,
yeah.
just a science basically when it comes down to that. What was that like for you adapting that new lifestyle? Because it can be just a huge shock to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I would give my advice to these people is don't go for the bigger shows when you start out. Get it under your belt. When I started, I dreamed of doing like in the Northeast, the Boston shows are big shows. And I did more regional, like Connecticut and Rhode Island shows where it's a smaller show. And that way, I'm going to tell you, my diet wasn't perfect at first. And I did cheat on my diet, and I did start working with coaches, and I didn't follow the rules. But as I started paying attention and saw my body responded when I did eat my meals at timed correctly, I fell in again, just more in love with the sport. So again, for those people, it's like, just do a show, get it under your belt, understand what the process is like, because also until you walk that stage, that first show, that's when you either love it or you're like, oh, I get it now. Now I do want to take it to the next step. And just like, you play sports, or somebody would pick up a guitar who's never picked it up before. Are they 9 times out of 10? Are they going to be Eddie Van Halen? No, the first time they play. But can you build and become something phenomenal? And that's how I always tell my personal training clients and my fitness clients how to approach fitness.
Oh, 100. I mean, yeah, honestly couldn't have said it better myself, because it's one of those things where people, especially when I was like, say, like my generation, I mean, everyone wants the results now and they want them yesterday, where they're not willing to put in the work that it takes because they don't realize it's a time process. I mean, you can work out for one day and you look in the mirror, you're not going to be any different. So it's something that just takes a lot of determination, especially with these short attention spans that me and a lot of my friends have. It can be difficult at times. So yeah, and that just adds more to just the hard work that prep really entails when people go into it, that a lot of people just don't realize. But that also brings me into, I mean, if you were to poll the general public, there'd be a singular percentage of people that I think would agree, or would at least be willing to pose in front of people in a bikini. I mean, it's something that takes a lot of courage, a lot of drive, a lot of willpower. Was that something that you struggled with starting out, sort of realizing that, hey, like, I'm exposing myself to a lot of people when I go up on that stage? Like, it's not something that a lot of people would be comfortable with. Or did it just get to a point where, like with a lot of our guests, where you just trained so hard and so long that you just say, I just want to get on stage and show it off?
Yeah, I would definitely say I love these questions. I would definitely say at first I was like, it was like your first comment. It was scary. You're walking around in this itty bitty bikini, and so what's scary and hard, and but as your love of the sport grows and you get it, you are not looking at yourself like you're wearing a bikini. You're wearing it's part of the sport. It's a badge.
Hmm.
It's important to wear that suit to show off, because what the judges are looking for is what we look like, lean and mean, and underneath our clothes. So it does teach you to let go a little bit in a positive way.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so here's the thing: I started out in this. I didn't play sports. I've been in the fitness industry for over 22 years, and gosh, or maybe 25. But as when I first started out as a trainer, I trained my clients and myself to be lean, and with that came less muscle. We weren't bodybuild. I wasn't teaching people to bodybuild. I was teaching them how to diet and be lean. Up until 8 or 9 years ago, that's when I started training for bodybuilding, which is to build muscle. And with that being said, so I wasn't one of those genetic freaks who just started competing. Everything I have is built from the ground up, if that, you know what I mean?
I gotta say, that always brings me up to the story, to the luckiest guest I've ever had on the face of the earth. It was a girl. She had never even, she had barely lifted weight. She lifted a little bit. She never even took posing classes. She never even did anything. She went up on stage and she won her first show without even doing like any.
Yeah.
She has winged it, and she was just one of those genetic freaks that you were just talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
I like, and I was like, okay, I don't know if that's all just genetic. And then she showed me, she had a photo right next to her when she was like 10 years old or whatever. I was like, yep, okay, that is genetics, because yeah, if you look like that when you're 10, yep, that's definitely genetics. But that also brings me into the most surprising thing by far that I ever learned since I've started this podcast, that I never really would have guessed, and I don't think no one else would have really guessed, is that I'd say a vast majority of the competitors, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than their diet. It's harder than their working out. I mean, posing is one of those things that isn't talked about so much on Instagram when it comes to, getting ready for your show. But I always compare it to like being there's a difference between being a good driver and a great driver. And there's also a difference between being a good poser and a great poser. It's something that takes so much time and so much effort. Was posing difficult for you at first? And even if it wasn't, I mean, how has that evolved over time? How has posing really changed for you?
Posing, I wasn't good at. I was a back pincher, and but that was the greatest thing because that made me work harder. And then I started working with posing coaches, and because you can practice all day long and look at yourself in a mirror, when you're on show day, number one, you can't look and make sure you're lined up correctly. It also helped me bring like the best part of you out to the stage. But on show day, the point I wanted to make. On show day, you're so excited, but you're also depleted and exhausted. So you have to practice 10 times more because that show day, you have so many different things coming at you that you have to have your posing down. So it's second nature.
Mhm. I always say, people just don't realize that for a lot of these competitors too with the posing, it's a more of a workout for them than some of their average workouts because I mean it's just you're sweating, you're just constantly just flexing everything, and it's really, really hard on the body. But what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
I mean, here's the thing. I'm working my what used to be my least favorite
Mhm,
pose was my front pose, but that's my motivation every day
mhm,
to make my weak pose my stronger
mhm,
pose. And I would definitely say my back pose is a strong pose. I
mhm,
think it helped me win. And some of my mentors, have always said to me, shows can be won from the back, and that I lucked out like that. I can nail that pose.
mhm. Well, and plus, I always say the back pose is really cool because you don't have to smile. You can kind of sort of let your guard down. You can maybe let your stomach come out just a tad and just take a few breaths. It's kind of if you hit it really good, yeah, it really is one of those things that really separates. I think, especially for women, because men, I think it's a little bit easier for them to grow out their back. So for women, I mean, that really, if you have a really good back, I think that really shows, that you've been putting in a lot of hard work in the gym and you've been really going hard at it. But I love to ask, all my guests that come on my show, whether they be, my bands that I have on, my bodybuilders that I have on, or my
Yeah.
professors that I have on. For my bands, I
Mhm.
always ask, what is it like performing live in front of all those people and, doing your set? But that also applies to bodybuilding. What is that feeling like for you when you get to go on stage and show off all of that hard work?
Proud because the when you're walking on that stage, do you know how many people say they want to do a competition and quit? So I definitely feel like the days I didn't want to be there, or there are times when you had the flu, you hurt your foot, and you just persevered. So it has to be that, like for me, that I'm proud to walk the stage that day. It did segue into me. One of the reasons why I started living without a wig is because of competing. Because when I would show up show day and had my wig on, I felt like I wasn't showing the real me. That totally, like, no lie, is one of the true reasons. Once I started performing or posing on stage wigless, I felt like I was really starting to come into my own and shine. And here's the thing: I'm doing the New York Pro in 14 weeks. With some of the best of the best. That's a whole new level of performance. That's where a lot of my work is going into rocking that stage differently than I did before I was graced with a pro card.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I gotta ask, what is that feeling like that you had when you won your pro card? Because for anyone out there who isn't familiar, I mean, winning your pro card, that for a lot of these competitors, that is the culmination of all of the hard work that they put into it. That is them, they finally get to be a pro and they finally get to compete in the pro shows, which is a huge deal. What was that feeling like for you when you won your pro card?
It was really great, but what was outside of what I ever expected was I did win an overall at NPC Universe 2017. To have, to any competitor, I always reach out to the judges. I take from what a bunch of the judges would tell me, and then I'd make a game plan from there. So I was getting a lot of compliments on my posing, my stage presence. I'm getting leaner. I looked really good. The one thing they were always saying, "Go home, get more muscle. Go home, get more muscle." Respectfully, to then win my pro card, walk back out and win an overall, I still get choked up because it was like beyond what I thought.
Mhm.
Because it was like a thank you. Because a lot of these judges, like here in the Northeast, have seen me before. So they saw my hard work and effort, and that I just kept coming back. I kept putting my head down. And I did 7 or 8, national shows.
Mhm.
So I didn't walk on stage and just get it. So it was phenomenal feeling.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few guests that come on that win it in their first show or their second show, and they do admit that it feels weird just because they don't feel like they put in the hard work that so many other people that have competed, for years upon years to get that. So yeah, it's definitely. I think it's better if you worked a little bit harder for it because then it makes you appreciate more. Because if you just walked on stage once and won it, I don't think you really have that amount of appreciation for what it's like really to be a pro as much as the next person would. But that also leads now. One of my fun questions I love to ask is, what is your go-to post show meal?
Um, A little bit of everything.
Hmm.
It's seriously, I like little bites. I like a glass of wine, some appetizers, my meal, a bite of dessert. I so like just going to a nice restaurant and getting some meat and cheese platter, less cheese these days because the more you diet, I can't do dairy anymore. But then just having just a meal. It's not even the food. It's just that putting your feet back and having lots of little bites and
Hmm.
enjoying myself.
I mean, I always say if I ever compete, I would just rent out a Five Guys for the night and then just go to town and just tell them, you're cooking it until I pass out, basically. So yeah, that would definitely be a thing. But one of the most important questions that I love to ask because it's not talked about enough on Instagram, and I really think a lot of people get tricked by this, is so many people are sort of blinded by the fact that they think that the stage look that is presented on stage is attainable and it's able to be kept for 365 days out of the year.
Yeah,
Most people don't realize that look is not sustainable. You are going to have to put on weight after a show because
yeah,
you've sort of manipulated your body through all the dieting and through all the hard work into a look that you're not going to be able to maintain. So I always say, because I've had so many people come up to me and say that, like, that's the most shocking part that they found in the podcast, if they listen to it, is that it's not a sustainable look. Was that ever a struggle for you when you first realized that, like, hey, all this hard work that I put in months upon months of working out into this prep, I'm not going to be able to keep this weight. I am going to have to put on weight, unfortunately. And has it gotten easier for you as time goes along to just sort of realize that, hey, if you said, with the judges want you to put on muscle, you are going to have to put on weight. I always say it's like just like a business. You got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. But how have you dealt with that?
Brian, you're asking me awesome questions. Definitely what it was hard for me. I do, like, probably 9 out of 10 people do. I've struggled with eating disorders, especially in my younger years. And you would think it would have been harder for me. And while it was a struggle and still is to a certain degree to let go like that, it's actually helped me. With that being said, no, it's not attainable. They're like, in prep now I'm getting leaner. I don't look at it like I would if I was dieting to go on vacation. I look at my body differently now and know not to be emotionally attached to a certain look, like aesthetically you know for beauty. Do you
Yep,
know what I mean? I'm looking at
absolutely.
myself like an athlete now. With that being said, yeah, it was hard. And then, like many, especially first time competitors say, well, I want to stay like this for a couple of months, but it's just not happening. Your brain wants food. I don't care who you are, what prep you've done. I always feel the same thing. And then something in your brain knows your shows are over and it's like you have to eat but then it'll settle down. But like for the first month post show, it's a roller coaster.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I've heard stories upon stories of people that gain like 40 to 50 pounds within a month, or they just aren't able to control it because your body, like you said, isn't used to eating as much. So when you do it, it's really hard for it to recover. And that's one of the struggles. I mean, that's why I love to ask that question, because so many people, it's not talked about too much, and a lot of people just don't realize that until it's too late. So I mean, yeah,
I
100%.
mean, with that being said, what helps is having a second goal.
Hmm.
So when I'm done with the show, even if it's like I just took 2 years off, still had a goal in mind. I still followed a plan. Be it even after the show, whether you have a coach or you do it on your own, you have to set a plan. Be it like one cheat meal a day, you still got to do some cardio. So for some people, they do have that exact mentality, and that's I don't gain 40 to 50 pounds because number one, you're gonna have to take that off. That's not muscle there; it's body fat. And number two, what helps that post show slump and those post show binges is to have something in mind. So yeah, it's just allowing yourself to eat, but also creating habits so you put the brakes on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's also get a coach too as well. That's the biggest thing that I could say too. Because I mean, if you're doing it by yourself, we've heard enough stories of that is we're just by yourself. It becomes almost impossible. But you're also an NPC judge. What inspired you to become a judge?
Um, I started out, so I always love working backstage. I'm not a crowd person. I'm ADD. I'm very active, and I like participating. And I love being in that environment and around the NPC. So I was working with Pro Tan for quite some time when they were in the Northeast, and that was backstage tanning and things of that nature. And then I had expedited a little bit, and then I had an opportunity to test judge, and I've only officially judged once. So I'll be doing more shows this year. Um, and it's just, again, it's just the next level of being part of the environment. And
Mhm.
it's awesome being so close to the stage and being at that table. It really does open your eye and adds to um, my knowledge base and appreciation for the sport.
And one of the things that I find interesting about judging is that, every judge has their own look that they prefer more than anyone else. I mean, someone might like someone who's just a little bit more muscular, they might like someone who's a little bit more leaner, or they might like someone who has a little bit bigger legs. I mean, it's really a lot of it is, just, all together they have the same sort of mindset, but then everyone, subconsciously, whether they like it or not, they have a little thing in their mind that says, like, that might be a little bit better than what that person's saying. What do you think would differentiate you from judges? What in your opinion is a perfect body, or what body part specifically are you looking the most on a competitor to see really where you would place them?
I think it's overall,
Mhm.
it's how they pose, it's symmetry,
Mhm.
and it's definitely conditioning.
Yep.
Did you put, how do you look? Did you put the work in? Are you, lean enough? I mean, it seems most times for most people, glutes and leg are the, what most people seem to be. From my experience, it seems that's people still need to get a little bit leaner.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. And that's definitely something that, I mean, I love talking to judges about that, and then also for judging. So for anyone out there who's just interested, how is the final score calculated? What do you guys do? How is it decided who's the winner?
um, That's a great question. I don't know that answer.
Mhm.
So I'm sitting on like the outer
Uh-huh.
tables. We're all they're all tallying up our scores.
Yep.
So I know the lowest and the highest, I believe, gets thrown out.
Mhm.
And then it goes from there.
Yeah.
And then the head judge is actually typically the one moving also a lot of the so I'm not a head judge, I'm on the
Yeah.
outside. The head judge is the one in the first call out, pretty much calling the lineup out.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and I always just found that fascinating because not too many people know about really what goes on behind that, and really, what the decision making process is and how it's determined. But yeah, I just find it really, really fascinating. But also, I mean, you're a personal trainer. How long into your journey before you realized that you really wanted to help out others and become a personal trainer?
um because when I first started out years and years ago, being somebody who struggled with food issues interested me. I had some mentors early on, some pro bodybuilders that I was fortunate enough to be around when I first started out, as well as my husband. We both worked at health clubs together growing up. Um, and then when I left the sport, when I had or personal training when I had alopecia, and then getting my life together, became an esthetician, and then I started. It all came together, and now I just love training. I have an excellent client base, and it's still growing. But I like helping people from all ends of the spectrum. I have cancer survivors. I have people who've been in major traumas. I do have some um, competitors, and I have a wide range of people that just need empowering. And most of my clients are older or mature, I should say, and their work ethic is double what, no offense, younger people are.
Mm-hmm.
So it is so much fun because a lot of them like, I can do it, I can do it. I'm like, hell yeah, you can
Yeah.
do it. So
Yeah.
it's motivating.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I know being a personal trainer, I mean, you probably hear this a lot. And my number one stereotype that I love to bust, but I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years with Instagram, I always say, but there's still a significant amount of women that have that fear if they walk into the gym and touch one weight. They're just going to hulk out, put on 50 pounds of muscle. And I always say to
Yeah.
that, I'd sign me up. I'll be your next client because you found a great secret. But I mean, did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, being a personal trainer, I bet you hear that all the time. What do you respond to that whenever you hear it?
I respond, don't worry, you'll never look like
Hmm.
somebody else. And I'm, I break it down like we just talked a little while ago about genetics. You don't have the genetics. You're not going to. And I do use myself as an example. And a lot of people, like, that's why I tend to post pictures of me years ago, and I was thinner, and I'm like, I'm working at this every day. Why don't I look like She Hulk? I just won't. There's nothing I can do. So, and with that being said, I have a lot of clients who take, and I love all the classes we have at our health club. but they're all plateaued. They don't understand they need to be out there pushing, weights to also help themselves be stronger. They don't feel strong, they don't look strong, they're plateaued, and explaining muscle is going to help your metabolism as well.
I couldn't agree more. It's really one, and I always tell the people that I know. I always tell the story also of when I was in college. Getting bigger and stronger. One of my really good friends, she came up to me and said, like Ryan, I'm seeing all these changes. I want to go to the gym and work out with you. I'm just afraid I'm going to get too bulky. And then I said, look,
Yeah.
the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs or when we go out to like get something to eat weighs more than a lot of the dumbbells in the gym, and you're not getting an ounce of muscle from lugging that thing around 24/7. So that sort of convinced her. And then she's like, oh yeah, I'll go. So she went in there and she really really enjoyed it. And I always tell everyone else too. It's like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get healthier and stronger. But
Yeah.
you talked about this a little bit before, but I always love to bring it up. The number one thing that I think really impacts women so much more than it does men is the confidence boost that it gives you. Just the overall confidence and how it affects everything else in your day-to-day life. Could you sort of describe what that was like for you? Because that's one of those things that I love to talk about, because you can take that from working out and you can adapt it to every other aspect in your life. It's one of the few things that you can really take from weightlifting that really applies to everything in your life.
I mean, I'm here with you today,
Mhm.
being interviewed. I walk into environments bald, that typically I never would have. When I'm scared, I stand tall and I feel strong. When I'm with my daughter and some creepy guys looking at her, I'm standing tall. I mean, it's endless the confidence boost it gives you. Do
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. I mean, for me too, even it was this confidence. I mean, you're more willing to talk to people that you might not have ever talked to. It's just I mean, you're able to stand up for yourself a lot more and not be, maybe as taken advantage of, like maybe even at work or at other scenarios where you might be expected to do stuff. I mean, yeah, 100%. I completely understand that. And yeah, I mean, that's why I love talking about it, because everyone has their own story when it comes to all that confidence boost. And it's definitely one of the positive things. But now, two of the questions that I love to ask all of my health and fitness guests that I have on. So for the first one, for me, when I started going to the gym in college, getting bigger and stronger, there were so many positives that came with it. But one of the negatives are you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still home with my parents for the next few months before I move out. And every time they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway with the groceries in them, being the good son that I am. But have you found that to be a similar experience where people take one look at you and they just assume that you could do favors like that for them?
Yeah, definitely the grocery store. They pack my bags heavy,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. For me, it's always a double-edged sword because I'm 6'3", so I mean, I mean, even if I didn't have any muscle, I'd still get asked. They'd say, "Oh yeah, tall guy can do it." So yeah, I mean, that was definitely one thing that I really had to adjust to, and the fact that like especially if you go out, I mean, I'll get asked to arm wrestle like once or twice. Not so much now because I've lost a little bit of it, but just back then, yeah, it was really something that I had to get used to. But probably my favorite question to ask, and again, you guys, this is a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there listening. But when it comes to clothes for fit women, I always love to say your clothing options can be limited. For men, it's a little bit different, but for women, I mean, also as well, they have their own difficulties. I always say, like if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where it just can be a huge struggle. What are some ways that you sort of have found to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be very limited?
Well, especially off season
Hmm.
when you are putting on size. I've lived in leggings and anything, stretchy material, and have a good seamstress,
Hmm.
affordable person to take your clothes in. So I order a size up and just have it taken in. I do think it's getting, there are more choices than ever with more companies catering to our needs, but I really don't dress up anymore. I live pretty much in, leggings and a cute top. So,
Yeah, I mean, I always tell the story of when I came home for a wedding from college and I'd gained like 15 pounds of muscle my freshman year. I went down to pick something up and I heard a zoot. And luckily it was the shirt inside the suit. It wasn't the suit itself. So I lucked out big time on that one. But that's when I realized, hey, I need to definitely probably make a wardrobe change. But I forgot to ask, because you're also a posing coach. So if you were to take in just an average woman of, just who's just trying to compete for a show, what would you say overall is the hardest pose to teach all the women clients that you have?
probably the back
Hmm.
pose, because you can't see it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely um, you know, by muscle memory. Everybody wants to, like I mentioned, I did it, pinch their back muscles. And also, you have to kind of arch your back so you're up nice and tall, and you're kind of like I'm coming from. I do mostly figure posing, so you're kind of sticking your butt towards the judges and you're arching your back up. So that's pretty much one of the harder ones. And everybody wants to look like they're when they're starting out, they're so tense, they look like they're riding a chopper.
Mhm.
So it's also to teach that it's the origin of it comes from your body and your lats and your delts and your core, not your arms,
Mhm.
if that, so to speak.
Oh yeah, it has to be like all about synchronization too, and just maintaining that. I mean, one of the hardest things that we've talked about too, especially with posing, is just making it look effortless. That can be one of the hardest things for people, is just making it look like you're not just grunting out of your mouth, or you're just really tensing up. I mean, that's just a huge struggle, but it makes it so much more inspiring. That, I mean, especially when someone's really able to pull off their posing. But like you said, it's a lot of it's muscle memory, and it just takes, with everything else in life, a lot of practice. But now
Mhm.
we go into our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire. We're going to ask Laura here about a dozen or so questions that we ask all of our health and fitness guests, and we're going to see how her answers stack up to everyone else's. So, for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
My go-to workout song, oh, "This Is Me" from, The Greatest Showman.
I cannot believe how common that answer's been. We get that answer all the time, so I definitely need to check that one out, because yeah, that is definitely one of our more common answers. So,
I feel
this is
like
me.
heading into a prep, it's, like, firing me up, like, to just walk on that stage.
Mhm. Yeah, so
Mhm.
I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. I mean, for me, I'm more of an old school. I gotta have my '80s music, my cheesy '80s, where you
Oh,
know,
I love cheese.
I
I do have,
yeah.
oh my, Van Halen. I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
what it is. I don't know why, but there's a lot of their songs firing me up.
Like, I have the whole Rocky 4 soundtrack. I'm one of those guys where I just, I have to play my cheesy '80s music. But also, I have a gym at my house, so I'm lucky, so I can work out, 75% of the time there. But when I
Yeah.
do go to a normal gym, I mean, I'm one of those people where I have to wait for the beat to drop. So I've had times where, like, if I'm doing a lat pull down, I've had times where I'm just like that for like 30 seconds, and I've had people come up to me and say, like, "Hey, are you all right? Did you pull out your back?" And I'm like, "Nope, just waiting for the beat to drop." So yeah, I am known throughout my gym as the guy who waits for the beat to drop. But hey, I'll take it. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train with any celebrity, who would it be?
Well, I've already trained once with Bev Francis.
Ooh.
Yeah, or actually a few times. And Julie, I've been fortunate in the Northeast that we have so many amazing
Hmm.
pros here. Um, I don't have an answer off the top of my head. I'm so like, what?
What about like
Um,
Hollywood celebrities? Any one of those?
um, Hollywood celebrities? No, I just
Yeah.
met Jennifer Strobo, and she's an Olympian.
Yeah.
No, I don't off the top of my head. I just, I mean, I think recently, and just from um, the research, it's dorky, but Dorian Yates and how
Yeah.
he went from bodybuilding to yoga and adapting his
Mhm.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had that answer 2 podcasts ago. So yeah, Dorian Yates is on the answer sheet again. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train any celebrity, who would it be?
If I could train any
Yeah.
celebrity, oh gosh, you're asking me these amazing questions. I would say anybody who's skinny,
Yeah.
add some size. Oh my God, we just had the Super Bowl, and how many uh, female competitors posted that Adam from Maroon Five,
Hmm.
he needs a good training. He took his shirt off at the Super Bowl
Hmm.
and he had no muscle.
Yeah, yeah, I know. So yeah, that would be good. I mean, we normally get like comedians, but I always say to that, like, you're not gonna be able to get a workout in. You'll get a great ab workout, but that's about as good as it'll get. But now for our next question, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
I would definitely say egg whites
Yeah.
because you could add it to anything, vegetables, more meat. Like that's I eat it multiple times a day.
Yeah, egg whites is probably our second most common answer behind chicken, but the most surprising by far for me has been mustard. I would have never guessed that in a million years. We get that answer all the time. That's probably like fourth or fifth, but just because it has 0 calories, zero fat, you have all these
Yeah,
bodybuilders that just douse their chicken and whatever else they have in mustard.
absolutely.
But I always say to that, I was like, oh, I could never do that, because I used to be mustard, but now ketchup. I'm team ketchup, but I always say if they made ketchup as healthy as mustard is, I would do that 100%.
They do. Here's a tip: they have sugar-free ketchup,
That doesn't
and
taste the same.
yeah, but you do a
Yeah.
squirt of that sugar-free ketchup, a squirt of mustard, and you got this little sweet, salty
Yeah.
friend.
I might have to give that a try one of these times, because yeah, I've always wanted to have that happen. But I also, I mean, just going off on sort of a little bit of a food tangent though, when you started into this health and fitness lifestyle, what was your biggest struggle that you think you had to overcome when it came to adapting to a new way of eating?
Um, just eating healthy all the time and not deciding when I wanted to cheat or
Mm-hmm.
go off it. At first I did binge a lot at the beginning. I couldn't deal with the hunger. It just made me go crazy. So, definitely food timing and the right percentage,
Yeah.
I would just definitely say eating your meals every 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah,
whether you want to or not.
yeah, and for me, if I did that, I would be like the scientific part as well, where I mean everything has to be measured out perfectly. I mean it has to be, yeah. So that it really, I think that just takes so much dedication to just stick to that. But now going back to the questionnaire, out of all the followers that you have on Instagram, what do you think would be the most surprising thing that they would find out about you if they met you in person?
Um, the most surprising thing, um, I'm as real as I am on Instagram. That's like my number one comment I get from people,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm as sincere and as in person. And I'm 5'4". I'm tinier and I
Yep.
look bigger on Instagram.
That's what we get all the time. But believe me, you're one of the taller ones. I mean, we normally get like, I'm like 5 feet taller. I'm 5'1", and yeah, and sometimes on Instagram, like you said, they look like they're like 5'8", 5'9", and then when you meet them in person, you're like, oh wow, you're. But for me, it's the exact opposite. I mean, if people were to meet me in person, they'd be like, oh crap, you're tall. So yeah, I mean, it's yeah. But I always love asking that because there's so many things that people just find fascinating that I had
Yeah.
no idea about. But now we go to the fun part of the, or no, actually, now we have one final serious-ish question on the questionnaire. So, if you had the all-knowing power to change anything about the sport of bodybuilding, what would be the one thing that you would want to see changed?
If I had the power, I wish it was a little. I like it high. I like it a little hardcore. I hate the showman of it. I hate the. I shouldn't say hate. It's a lot to take in, all the Instagram that people post things and they don't even train or they haven't done a show and they're think they're a prep coach or a
Yeah.
posing coach. One of the reasons I don't do a lot of contest prep, because I feel like I'm going to put it out there when I feel ready to put it out there, and I take it seriously. And the amount of people who are coaches, it drives me crazy. I think that's a little off topic. But
Oh no, I understand that 100%. We've gotten that answer actually like 4 or 5 times because there are so many people that just think that if they do one show, then they're like a certified personal trainer, where then they can give everyone advice. And some people only do a show just for that, just so that they can start their own business and grow. So yeah, that's
yeah,
definitely probably one of my biggest pet peeves as
yeah.
well. But now we get to the fun part of the questionnaire. So what was the last TV show that you binge watched?
It was a few months ago, so it's kind of boring, but Jane the Virgin on Netflix.
That is one that's coming up there again. I mean, that's like the 7th or 8th time. So yeah, that's one that I haven't checked out, but I might have to watch an episode just to see what it's all about because we've heard so many good things about it. But what is your favorite TV show of all time?
Sex in the City.
Sex and the City. That is the 3rd time that we've had that answer on, so I'm just writing it down right here because I like to
And girls.
tally
I
up the
like
answer.
anything bold. I like
Yeah.
the girl power bold shows.
Oh yeah. We get those all the time. But now, what is a guilty pleasure movie that you enjoy?
A guilty pleasure movie? Oh gosh. Guilty pleasure movie. Let me think. That I'll probably watch 100 times. Um, when I'm in prep, this is funny. Julie and Julia. That just came into my head. I'll watch that 100 times because they're eating the whole time.
Yeah.
Anything food porny is pretty much my guilty pleasure.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, and for me, I mean, all my guy friends, close your ears. You'll never hear me admit this in person, but Princess Bride is my guilty pleasure movie. I will watch that movie whenever it comes on. I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll watch it. I mean, that's definitely one of my favorites. But again, all my guy friends, I'll never admit it to you in person. Just listen to the podcast and you'll hear it on there. But now, what is your favorite fashion trend of all time and least favorite fashion trend of all time?
Favorite fashion trend of all time are leggings and high-waisted leggings. And I would say least favorite would be anything fluorescent.
Yep. Yeah, I can agree with those. But for me, I mean, flannel is so huge up here, especially when it gets to be as cold as it does. So that's probably my favorite, at least during the winter. My least favorite, I mean, my dad ruined this in the late 90s, fanny packs. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I always say this because sometimes some people might get a little offended, but women can rock a fanny pack as long as they want. But guys,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, guys, come on. It's like, let it go. It's like, that's not your thing. So yeah. 100%. But for our last question of the questionnaire, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Eat and train.
Yep.
Eat. Don't starve yourself. Then I would have had a leg up.
That's honestly what I mean. I was lucky that I was into it when I was 18 because I really need something to do. But yeah, if I could go back too, I mean, it would be somewhat similar to that. I mean, I'd also say like don't try to please everyone because you're not going to be able to. So just stuff like that. But now we're done with the questionnaire, so I like to ask these last few questions before we wrap things up. So I know that you said you're like, what was it, 14 weeks away from your next competition?
Correct.
So do you have any plans of competing after that? Is there a show after that, or is this just the one that you're preparing for this year?
I am pondering another show, but I really just want to enjoy. This is a big show, and I want to enjoy myself. So I just want to focus on that show.
And if we were to talk to you again in like a year from today, where would you like your life to be at? What goals do you have?
I'd like to do more speaking, and that's part of the reason why I was honored when you asked me. Um, and maybe some coaching, but maybe more wellness, life coaching type. Maybe some online work, and broaden my business, and hopefully be 10 pounds more muscle or 5 pounds more muscle.
Yeah, that too. I mean, I would say that too as well. But now, if for everyone out there who's listening who might have alopecia universalis, what would be the best piece of advice that you have for them in order to live a healthy and happy life?
It's your journey. Do it at your pace. Don't listen to anybody. And there's both sides to having alopecia. There's people saying go wigless, and shun you for wearing wigs. And there are people, on the other side, saying I have a cure for this and that. And you have to just block out the noise and live your life. You're given a gift, and you're given a gift to make this your life. And just like you said, don't listen to anybody, be empowered, and find your inner strength.
I couldn't agree more with that. Now, lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Um, ooh, I mean, I would definitely credit where I am today to my husband, Bob Hathaway, who is also he's an IFBB classic physique pro.
Oh, wow.
Then secondly, Bill Anger is my current coach, as well as Jose Raymond, 212 pro, who helped me turn pro. And Kenny Wallach, I work with for posing.
Mhm. Oh yeah, he's one of the big ones. I hear his name all the time when it comes to people who work with him. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. And again, shout out to all those guys. But also follow Laura. I mean, I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. I'll leave a link to all of her stuff. I mean, just going and looking at some of her photos, you're gonna realize like, hey, I need to get off the couch and stop eating all these Twinkies and go and start to get in shape. But again, Laura, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. I mean, it was so great talking to you and so great, just hearing about how you got to where you're at right now. And honestly, you're one of the positive examples that I love to show that, I mean, just that can happen when you really just start to, change your lifestyle and just acceptance and just, I mean, it was just so amazing talking to you.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
Yeah.
You're outstanding. You're amazing.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. So again, you guys go and give her a follow. I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.